I'm going to ask you one of those simple but I hope telling questions, which is simply, what is your assessment? We saw and witnessed the booing as they arrived, as the Johnsons arrived at St Paul's yesterday. Much commentary upon that. But in the main, the newspapers are front to back the Jubilee stuff. What's your assessment of where we sit at the moment politically, Dan?
Well, as you said, I mean, certainly the main coverage this morning is on the Jubilee celebrations more broadly. But for Tory MPs who have been weighing up whether or not to finally make this move against Boris Johnson, I think they were looking very, very closely, and indeed were frankly very alarmed by the booing that he received yesterday, because what a lot of Tory MPs were saying to me yesterday was that, look, this really shouldn't be the sort of crowd that was booing a Conservative Prime Minister. This should be Boris's base. And so to answer your question, the perception I've got, and I think the general perception from most people in Westminster, is that when we come back on Monday, Boris will be facing a leadership challenge. There is some debate amongst Tory MPs about whether they should wait until after the forthcoming by-elections to see how he performs in that. But the general mood sort of today is that we're going to see a leadership contest triggered sometime next week.
There's an awful lot of ink has been expended on saying that may well be the case, but the likelihood of him actually losing that vote of confidence is by no means certain.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think you talk about the ink that's been expended. I think I've expended most of it over the last few months. I mean, we've had this contest sort of speculated about for quite a long time. I think at the moment, again, this is just the broad perception. At the moment, the perception is that if there is that contest, then Boris will have sufficient support to stay on as Tory leader and Prime Minister. But the question is, and the issue everybody will be looking at, is how many MPs, if we do have the challenge, how many MPs will fail to back him? And obviously that is the key thing that we've seen in leadership contests of this kind in the past. It's very rare for a Prime Minister to lose outright on the first contest, but the question is whether or not there will be so many of his MPs who withdraw their support that he's fatally wounded, and we are looking at another contest in a year's time. I mean, that's
very reminiscent of the defenestration of Thatcher in the first vote and the second vote. I totally agree with that analysis. Final point, I'll tell you what really did catch my eye, Dan, and that was Tobias Ellwood saying that the Conservative Party needs to consider re-entering the single market and sorting out the post-Brexit scenario. And Tom Tugendhat, who has not said that he sent a letter in, but has displayed his own concerns about the leadership as well, quite publicly saying, no, Ellwood is wrong on that. I mean, that is really a very tasty disagreement between two of the bright young Turks.
It is, and I think it shows how seriously Tom Tugendhat is preparing for a leadership contest. I mean, he's been, of all the potential candidates, I mean, to his credit, he's the one who's actually come out and stood up and said, yeah, I would actually quite like to be Prime Minister, which is quite refreshing from the normal, well, I can't see the circumstances sort of double speak that we get. But I think what was significant is that Tom Tugendhat, who is someone who is normally identified with the more one nation liberal wing of the Conservative Party, came out and very clearly said, no, we're putting this European issue to bed. This is not something we're going to look at. And that, I just think, shows how serious he is about any potential candidacy.